Algeth'ar Academy is the weirdest dungeon in this season's dungeon pool. It looks like it's all sunshine and good vibes in there, and the voice lines are S tier, but actually everything in this dungeon is super dangerous. One mistake and you're on the train to downtown Clowntown. The timer has already been increased by a minute twice because between the long travel time, the solo mini-boss, the RP before bosses appear, and the pools that have gotten way harder since Dragonflight, timing this dungeon might still be a close call. After you start the dungeon, there are recruiters from each Dragonflight that will give you a buff if you pledge to their flight. You can choose bronze for haste, blue for mastery, green for healing taken, black for crit, and red for verse. The only important thing to remember here is that every buff is a percentage-based buff, except for mastery, which is a flat number. The story of the dungeon seems to be that the dragons are getting ready to reopen the school, but then they need our help cleaning some pests or something. I still don't know what all these birds are doing here. After we've gotten our buff, we can choose which boss we want to tackle first, but most groups will start in the Overgrown ancient area. This is a nice, big, juicy bloodlust pool, but unfortunately it's 2026 and this pool has new mechanics, making it a nightmare for tanks, especially if they're blood decay.
Slow down! I want to get there, but I want to get there alive!
There are 3 vile lashers here, a ton of hungry mini lashers, and skitterflies. Most of the danger to the tank, and by extension the whole group, comes from these big lashers, because they put a stacking bleed on the tank that will be unhealable when it's over 5 stacks.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
You can kite this out if you're fast enough, but unfortunately the lashers are, yes,
immune to CC.
You can AoE stun or slow the other ones here to keep them away from the tank while they try to kite the big lashers, but keep in mind that some tanks, blood decay, need mobs nearby to heal. The safest way to do this pull is to mark one lasher with a skull, and once it's down or at least almost dead, you pull in the third lasher. That is of course if you can't kite far enough away to let the bleed fall off. The bleed is a cast, so the tank can try to put some distance between them and the lashers while they're casting it, letting their bleed stack drop off. DPSing the pack down fast is made harder by these giant circles that disorient and damage you when you stand in them. This is also a way a tank can die, by the way. And the skitterflies have a stacking damage range. It can be soothed, and it should be soothed because they do way more damage to tanks and also random other players that they jump to with darting sting. While this pull is on the tank and healer to survive, it's actually a DPS mechanic, because they need to make sure the pack dies before the tank runs out of defensives or the will to live. If you think about it like that, every mechanic is essentially a DPS mechanic. After this massive pull and the DPS are flying high on dopamine while the tank and healer cry in the corner, we get this tree boss. This is a tangent, but I saw someone get on this mount after killing this boss, and it was both disrespectful and hilarious. Good job. Anyway, one of the main mechanics in this fight is Germinate, where the boss spawns puddles under the players for 4 seconds. You all need to stack up for this and move in the same direction. This makes it easier to dodge the circles, but more importantly, these circles will spawn tiny lashers that need to be burned down immediately. So the tighter you line up the circles, the easier it'll be to quickly AoE them all down. If you don't, they will absolutely eat your tank alive, especially after the Bark Breaker Tank Buster, which makes your tank take 100% increased physical damage for 9 seconds. Every other Germinate, the boss also spawns a big circle with an ad called Ancient Branch in it. Essentially, the boss breaks off his own arm, and then splinters fly around and put a bleed called Splinter Bark on all players. The Ancient Branch will then try to heal Tree Boss. Obviously interrupt this. When the branch dies, it leaves behind this green circle. Now, I know the game has conditioned players to move out of circles and that people sometimes actively run away from soaks, but I'm begging you to stand in this one. It's a good circle, it's nice and green, it heals you. It also removes your Splinter Bark bleed, so unless you've got a stone form or cauterize hidden in your spellbook somewhere, get in the circle.
Get in, loser, we're going shopping!
The tiny lashers also have a chance to apply poison to their target, so AoE CC when the lashers jump out is always nice. The next mini-boss is this Guardian Sentry that's by itself in some gazebo, and it sucks up a lot of time. The Sentry has 3 signature moves: a nature hit on the tank, tornadoes that stun and damage players that get hit by them, and a giant knockback / damaging ability called Expel Intruders. To avoid certain death from the Expel Intruders cast, you can line of sight behind one of these pillars, step out of the circle completely, or you can take some damage by face tanking the ability with your back to a wall. The alternative is doing none of that and flying all the way to Oz. Oh, and if you happen to die to this mob, be careful rejoining your group because of something draw distance. The expel intruders circle won't be visible to you and you will be ejected from the fight before you can join in. Next we've got a whole bunch of birds.
Look at all those chickens.
Tanks, get ready to bleed even more. These will hurt a lot. These birds might look small and insignificant, but they are straight up cold-blooded murderers.
When the birds first started attacking us, we all thought it was pretty funny and made Hitchcock jokes.
In the second and third packs, we also got alpha eagles, big birds that are, you know,
immune to CC.
These birds have a deadly frontal that can be hard to see. I haven't tested it myself, but I think an inky black potion can help here. And they do a heavy AoE screech that does a lot of damage to the whole group and enrages the other bird. So suits are again super important. And then we have to deal with this big dirty birdie. To summon Crawth, you have to pick up 3 balls and run into the goal circle to throw them. Before we get to the extra ouchy mechanics, Crawth does 3 things throughout the fight. Another bleed tank buster, a knockback frontal on a random player, you should sidestep this or risk flying to Narnia, and Deafening Screech, a heavy AoE attack plus dot, which also interrupts and silences you if you were casting at the end of that. At 75 and 45% health, 2 goal circles appear and the boss starts casting Ruinous Winds, a heavy AoE attack that also knocks back players. To interrupt this cast, players need to quickly put 3 balls into a goal to start the next phase of the fight. You can choose wind first and then fire, or the other way around. Because of the heavy group damage and large amount of stun fire circles, most groups choose to deal with wind first. Especially because whichever ability you use first stays active for the whole rest of the fight. If you put 3 balls into the wind goal, this is the one on the left with the blue floating orb above it, Gale Force will go off, which summons tornadoes around the area and strong winds will push players around. To stop this and get a sick haste buff, you can pick up these air orbs around the room. Seriously, I've seen a lot of people ignore these and it's basically a free PI and Bloodlust on top of each other. Activating the fire goal will start a firestorm which will stun the boss and make her take 75% increased damage for 12 seconds. The trade-off is that there are a lot of fire circles to dodge that stun and damage people on top of the tank bleeds and deafening screeches going out, and if the tornadoes are also up you might get damaged by them, knocking you into a fire patch and then die, or you move out of the frontal into a tornado. Anything can happen here. Another time suck here is that this dungeon has a lot of backtracking. After Crawth dies and to get to the third boss we have to jump back to the Guardian Sentry's little gazebo and then go right. On the right side we've got a lot of nasty magical trash. We've got corrupted mana fiends casting Surge which will take you out. This one on a 13 took me from 75% health to the grave. They also, as legend says, do a cast called Mana Void where they do a lot of arcane damage and steal a big chunk of your mana. I haven't seen this spell being cast or go off with my own eyes because it seems they were either casting Surge or they were dead. We've also got Battle Axes doing damage to the tank, Arcane Foragers doing drive-by damage to random players, these textbooks gone wild putting people to sleep with their monotonous lectures.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
That can be dispelled when it goes off, but uh-oh if it's on the healer. And we also have a mob that is
Immune to CC.
The Arcane Ravagers do 2 back-to-back abilities. First they leap to a player with Vicious Ambush. This damages them, puts a dot on them and knocks them back. Don't do this close to edges. Then they will immediately cast Rift Breath, a frontal from their location to the tank. You need to be aware where this cast is going and pre-position away from the breath because a tick or 2 standing in it, depending on the key level, will be enough to send you to your death. After all the mobs in the circle are dead and a few seconds of RP, you can skip this pack first and then kill it while you wait, Vexamus appears. Wowhead has an easiest dungeons to hit 3400 rating with a tier list, and Algeth'ar Academy is solidly in the D tier. The insane damage from all of the abilities on Vexamus is a big reason for this. 5 arcane orbs spawn around the room and drift towards the boss. If Vexamus absorbs them, he does massive group-wide damage, so players need to spread around and all take 1 orb. Don't be a hero and take more than 1 unless it's an absolute emergency, because the next orb that you take within 18 seconds does 200% extra damage. And that stacks, so you can imagine what your healer is screaming at you when you take multiple orbs to the face without a defensive.
You done messed up, Aaron!
So always make sure you are letting your stacks drop before you take another orb because it will do a bunch of damage and reset the debuff with more stacks. The boss also has a big ouchie frontal, mana bombs on up to 3 players which does a ton of damage but also leaves a patch of arcane goop on the ground, And finally, when the boss reaches 100% energy, the boss does a giant pulse of damage plus knockback and then puts circles under players that will destroy you if you don't move out of them. This is pretty hard to heal because you need to constantly pre-position while players just take a truck ton of damage and will possibly take even more damage from the ground circles, if it doesn't outright kill them. Then we begin the long trek towards the last boss and we only have 2 new mobs standing in our way. The spectral invokers are just casting arcane bolts. They should also have an ability called Mystic Brand, which damages their target and makes them take 50% increased arcane damage for 20 seconds. I guess I'm lucky I haven't seen them cast it yet, because it's a pretty awful overlap with the other mob here, Algeth'ar Academy. This mob is, say it with me,
Immune to CC.
and does a whirlwind and an AoE smash ability. The whirlwind used to be on the mob itself, which made killing them quite annoying, but now it's an astral projection ability, so you can make sure you avoid the circle and be fine. The real damage here is arcane smash, which does massive damage to the whole group and is virtually impossible to outrange. The only way to not take any damage here is to line of sight the ability, but that might be difficult if an astral whirlwind is in your way, so use a defensive. The final boss, Echo of Doragosa, has changed a lot since Season 1 of Dragonflight. I guess Blizzard thought this fight was too easy, so with every returning season they've added more stuff to it. First, we've got the addition of Unleash Energy in Season 4 of Dragonflight, which does damage to the whole group on pull and opens 2 arcane rifts that shoot out orbs that if you touch them will put you on immediate life support. The arcane rifts are the sole reason this fight can turn into a disaster within seconds. Every ability in this fight that hits a player adds a stack of overwhelming power to that player. This damages them, but it also gives them a 5% haste buff. Once a player hits 3 stacks, they will drop a new arcane rift on their location, which will shoot out more of those orbs. New additions to this fight are adding a tank buster that will apply a stack of overwhelming power, and instead of one player having an energy bomb dot on them, which will turn into a stack of overwhelming power when it's dispelled or removed, it can now go on multiple players. By the way, if you get the energy bomb on you and you don't have 2 stacks of overwhelming power already, no need to run away to the other side of the world. It won't drop a rift unless you're planning to take an orb to the face before it's dispelled. Doragosa also blasts around random arcane missiles, so there are a lot of stacks of overwhelming power flying around, which means there will be way more rifts open than in earlier versions of the dungeon, and way more orbs to dodge, which, if they are not dodged, spawn even more rifts. Especially because at 100% energy, Doragosa pulls in everyone towards her with power vacuum and then has a giant circle around her that you need to get out of ASAP because it damages you and applies a stack of overwhelming power if you're in it. It's also very important that you position yourself in such a way that when the vacuum happens, it doesn't pull you through a bunch of rifts and orbs. The best way to deal with this fight seems to be to stack on or around the boss so you can drop rifts behind the boss and let the tank move into more open area. Oh, and the sweet spot for damage seems to be to have 2 stacks of overwhelming power on you at all times. It's like 2/3 of a PI.
Oh yeah, it's worth it. If you're strong enough.
And that's Algeth'ar Academy, a fun times vibes dungeon full of vocal stim voice lines, but it's also really difficult and always a second away from disaster. Thanks for watching.